Hey guys, welcome back. For today's topic, I want to cover Isaiah 7:14 and the polemics against it. Before I begin, I'm going to go ahead and read the passage just so that we know what we're discussing. The sign of Emmanuel. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, "Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven." But Ahaz said, "I will not ask. I will not put the Lord to the test." And he said, "Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Emmanuel means God with us. In this passage, God is telling Ahaz, ask me of a sign. It doesn't matter how big or small. It can reach into heaven or all the way down into Sheol. He will do this as a sign to show him that the Lord is telling him the truth. And Ahaz says no. So God said, fine, I will give you a sign. The virgin shall conceive and bear a son. This is a miraculous sign. A virgin can't give birth unless God commands it. The Jewish polemics against this comes from the translation of the word virgin. So if we go to Isaiah 7:14 in Hebrew, behold, the virgin. So the whole issue with this is a translation of the word almah or ha'almah in this passage. So if we go to ha'almah, we see that its lexicon is almah, which is 5959, damsel, maiden, virgin. Strong's, damsel, maiden, virgin. NAS, a young woman, a virgin. The connotation of the word describes a young woman whose moral purity and potential for marriage are assumed by the context. Jews say that this just means a young woman. It doesn't distinguish between if she is a virgin or not a virgin. But if you were to look at this passage, it doesn't make sense with the context of what's going on. So if we take the Jewish polemics on this, that it's not actually translated correctly, it just means a young woman and doesn't matter if she's a virgin or not. Well, that doesn't make sense with the passage because God is performing this miraculous sign. If we just say, oh, it just means a young woman, it doesn't mean that she has to be a virgin. Though that might be true, it doesn't match with this passage. Because if a young woman who's not a virgin gets pregnant, that's not a miraculous sign. It happens all the time. What is a miraculous sign is if that young woman is a virgin. And the connotation of the word almah means a young, chaste woman. So therefore, no, you can't use just a young woman that presumably might not be a virgin in this context, because that wouldn't be a miraculous sign. The other thing to look at is almah ever used in the Bible not to mean a virgin? And the Jewish argument is that Proverbs 30:19, she can't be a virgin. Well, let's put that to the test. If we go to Proverbs 30:18, which is where the passage starts, let's see if that holds water. 3 things are too wonderful for me. 4 I do not understand. So from the very beginning, we see that he's going to be talking about 4 things. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a virgin. Jews would say that this is also translated incorrectly because then the next passage says, this is the way of an adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done nothing wrong. But that doesn't make sense. If you read 18 and 19, they go together. Verse 20 is contrasting the last portion of 19. A virgin versus an adulteress. So even in this passage where they say, oh, this can't mean virgin, it 100% can mean virgin. And to take it as just a young woman who's not a virgin it doesn't make sense because it's being contrasted with 20, where you have an adulteress who claims that she's not doing anything wrong. So if we go to the Hebrew, verse 30:19, we see almah, which is the 59:59, means young woman or virgin, versus Proverbs 30:20, where we have isha, a woman, an adulterous woman. They are being contrasted. They are talking about two different things. So the almah in verse 19 is not being described in 20. It is being contrasted by a woman, an adulterous woman, in verse 20. And I really like the way this person wrote it. Proverbs 30:18-31 should be read as a unified poetic passage structured around four thematic sets that follow the repeated pattern. There are three things and the fourth. This literary arrangement builds suspense and places special emphasis on the fourth item in each set. In Proverbs 30:19, for instance, the rhetorical question centers on the mystery. What is it about the way of a man with a young woman that eludes understanding? To introduce this, the author cites three marvels of movement and direction: the way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a snake on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas. Each subject moves with confidence and elegance through the realm that seems to lack a clear path. Their motions are silent, fluid, majestic, yet they leave behind no visible trace. In the same way, the emotional and relational dynamic between a man and a young woman is portrayed as subtle and mysterious, eluding clear logic and explanation. The reference to the woman's youth is likely deliberate. In ancient Hebrew culture, youth often symbolized purity, innocence, and the mysterious awakening of love. The emotional trajectory of such love, where it begins and where it ultimately leads, feels as elusive and untraceable as the flight of an eagle through the sky. Although the man's age is not mentioned, it is important not to interpret this scene through a lens of lust. The placement of verse 20, which describes the callousness of an adulterous woman, creates a deliberate contrast. Where verse 19 inspires awe, verse 20 offers disillusionment. Therefore, the chemistry between a man and a young woman should be understood as one of romantic admiration and wonder, a positive, noble portrayal rather than a lustful one. So the Jewish polemics against the word almah used in Proverbs 30:19 also falls flat on its face. The other caveat to all of this is the Septuagint. The Septuagint is a book translated by rabbis some 300 years before Jesus was on the earth. And they understood the meaning of the word almah in Isaiah 7:14 to mean virgin because they translated it as parthenos, which means virgin. So if we go to what parthenos actually means, the term parthenos primarily means virgin and refers to an unmarried woman whose purity is intact. It can also apply to any person kept exclusively for one covenant partner. In biblical context, it is notably used to describe Mary in Luke 1:34, emphasizing her virginity. Additionally, parthenos carries historical and cultural significance in ancient Greek literature and has theological implications in Christianity. So as you can clearly see, the Jewish rabbis, before Christianity became a thing, they understood this to mean virgin. Not just a young woman, but a virgin. That is what makes it this miraculous sign. The Jewish polemics against this is, well, Genesis 34, Dinah is described as also parthenos, but she had just been assaulted, and so therefore she's no longer a virgin. But that's just dishonest at face value, because the meaning of parthenos means a young woman, connotation virgin, unless otherwise stated elsewhere in the passage. Genesis chapter 33 describes the event, and then the very next verse, when Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, then gives clarification that Parthenos just means young woman, because we have a clarifying statement later and before in the passage. That's not the same with Isaiah 7:14. The other argument is, well, if he meant virgin, why not use the actual Hebrew word that specifically denotes virgin, Bethula? Well, the main reason is the term almah has the connotation of virginity. Second, there's a concept in the Old Testament about dual prophecies. The concept of dual prophecies in Judaism refers to the idea that certain prophecies have both immediate and future fulfillment. This concept is rooted in the belief that God's messages are not always clear-cut and can be interpreted in different ways depending on the context of the individual's understanding. So, when they say, well, why don't they just use the word Bethula, which only means virgin? Because this is also a dual prophecy, showing that Isaiah is actually from God. And so we see in the next passage, and I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. So the immediate fulfillment of this prophecy is that Isaiah bore a son. But the actual meaning of the prophecy is for the Messiah, when he comes, this will be a miraculous sign that this virgin, this young unmarried woman, connotation virgin, will bear a son. And we will call him Emmanuel, God with us. There is not really any other logical way that you can make this work with the context of the passage other than for it to be translated as virgin. Thank you guys for staying till the end. Look out for my newer videos. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe. And until we meet again, may the peace of Jesus Christ be upon you, and God bless.